Let me preface this video by saying this definitely isn't going to be the normal type of content that you all are used to on this channel, but I do feel like I need to kind of get this out into the universe and see where the MMA community stands on this one. Now, let me start by saying, even if I don't agree with what the UFC is doing, I can usually understand where the UFC is coming from when they make some of these decisions. But in my opinion, they've taken it to a completely different level with this one. They've taken it to a level that potentially has the ability to truly hurt some fighters' careers. Now, what the hell am I talking about, right? What am I so upset about? As I'm sure most of you know, the UFC has their own YouTube channel that they post promos, highlights, the embedded series, things like that on, and they posted a promo for UFC 238 and made the title of that video Ferguson versus Cowboy, the people's main event. Now, does anyone else see anything wrong with that, or is it just me? In my mind, considering Tony Ferguson versus Cowboy Cerrone, no matter how much I'm looking forward to that fight, isn't even the co-main or main event on that card, that completely diminishes the two title fights that you, the UFC, booked for the co-main and main events on that card, and even kind of diminishes those titles as a whole. I mean, look, even though we all know the majority of eyes that are going to be watching those cards, or that card rather, are going to be there to see Tony Ferguson fight Cowboy Cerrone, the UFC should not be the ones pointing that out to people. It makes the UFC look a little bit insane, to be honest. It's like in their mind, if it's not a title fight, it can't be the main event. And if it is a title fight, even if the majority of fans aren't there to see it, they're still going to make it the main event either way. Now, that makes it seem like either they just don't give a damn what the fans really want to see anymore, or they just don't care about the legitimacy of their champions in the less popular weight classes. Because let's face it, the UFC is going to get paid the same either way with this new ESPN Plus deal. When you're getting paid per show and the pay-per-view numbers don't matter to your bank account nearly as much as they used to, I guess you can afford to completely undermine the careers and accomplishments of some of your fighters. I mean, the UFC gets paid the same either way, so why should they care, right? I mean, let's just take this into consideration for a second. That's like making CM Punk versus Mickey Gall main event over Conor Khabib just because CM Punk and Mickey Gall are fighting for whatever title fight that would be for. You know, what about Valentina Shevchenko, who has the ability to be a true superstar for you in the women's flyweight division? Or Henry Cejudo, who's fighting Marlon Moraes after manhandling Demetrius Johnson, who was largely seen as the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time, and then Cejudo knocked out and EPO'd out TJ Dillashaw in 32 seconds, right? I mean, what about those guys? I'd love to hear what they have to say about the UFC calling Tony Ferguson versus Cowboy the people's main event. I'm sure those guys expected it from media outlets, but from their boss, really, their employer? I mean, ever since WME IMG purchased the UFC, it seems like they've tried to adopt the whole WWE formula and make every pay-per-view main event a title fight for marketing purposes, right? WME IMG purchased the UFC on July 11, 2016, and the last time a UFC pay-per-view was ever headlined by a non-title fight was McGregor-Diaz at 202, which they even had to slap an interim title on because in their minds, I guess that brought more viewers in or helped with legitimacy or something. I mean, you just can't have the best of both worlds in a sport that isn't fake and has no made-up storylines. If you can control the narrative, maybe that model would work, but when you have no control over what happens in these fights or who's fighting for the titles or when they're fighting for the titles, either market those title fights as the main focus of the card no matter who's fighting, or migrate away from this whole mandatory title fight pay-per-view main event model. If the UFC stays on this same path, I have a really bad feeling they're going to end up shooting themselves in the foot at some point, if they haven't already for that matter. I mean, I don't know. I could be way off base with this, and I may be the only person in the world that sees this as an issue, but I'm trying to put myself in Henry Cejudo and Marlon Moraes' shoes right now, and, you know, seeing a video posted by the UFC, my boss, my employer, basically saying that my fight is minuscule compared to Cowboy versus Ferguson, how would that make you feel? You know, they made you the main event, and you've trained your ass off your whole life to get to this point, only to be pushed to the background by your own employer. I don't know, guys. Let me know where you all stand on this one. Do you think the UFC needs to stick with the current model or switch some things up? Do you agree with me, disagree? Let me know in the comments below. I'm truly curious where the community stands on this one, because it does seem like a big deal for the future of the UFC. Other than that, guys, thanks so much for all the support on the videos lately. I can't thank you enough for the likes, the comments, the subscriptions, everything you're doing. It truly helps the channel out a ton. If you made it this far in the video, you're one of like the 15% of people who don't have the attention span of a bird, so I appreciate that as well. Keep doing what you're doing, guys. Make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Later, guys.